It's like, the aesthetic is like perfect for tea and cuddles and writing and reading, but not so great when you use natural lighting. Let me tell you, not so great. Hey you guys, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today's tea talk is going to be on History is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera, not Silveria, Silvera, thank you tongue. But without further ado, let's just jump right in. So for those of you guys who don't know, History is All You Left Me is about Griffin, whose ex-boyfriend, Theo, has just died. Now this is it sounds a little depressing, but it just gets worse from here. And the only person who really understands Griffin's pain is Theo's current boyfriend, Jackson. So this is like not only on so many levels, like the synopsis is not only on so many levels of heartbreak and torment, like emotional damage to your soul, but then you have to add the awkward factor with the fact that the only person you can talk to about your ex-boyfriend, that you are still in love with and think that you will end up being endgame with, like, no matter what will happen, you guys will always find a way back to each other, is your ex-boyfriend's current boyfriend. Yikes. So my first thoughts when I heard this book was that I really was interested in the situation and the storyline. I thought it was going to be really like heart-wrenching and kind of a coming together thing, like growing and grieving, like growing into each other with the pain for it, and with pain in mind, and how like you get over the grieving process and how that works. I didn't think that this concept had been done before, so that was really exciting for me to read because, like I said, I haven't heard about this concept in the slightest, so here we are kind of like, this is one of the first books I've heard about this and how it was done. And like I was hoping that how it was going to be done was going to be perfect and beautiful. I was really excited for the gay because, you know, when you have like an awkward like love triangle suggestion with gay characters and it's like written in such a way that's devastating and beautiful, or like that's what I've had heard when I was hearing about this book, I thought that I was just going to be really excited for the gay, because let's face it, contemporary LGBTQIA reads are perfect depending on who has written it and what time it was written in. I also just knew that this book was going to destroy me emotionally, like I was going to be crying. I just knew it, just not only from the synopsis, but kind of like, I don't know, it's just mainly from the synopsis, but just kind of the title of the story and everything, it was just going to kill me. Oh, that's really sweet, Jesus. Cheese and crackers. So moving on to things I did like. As for things I did like about this book, I thought that it dealt with grief really well. It was kind of a sense of, what's the word? It gave you a sense of the pain that was going through, the attempts to move on, how you just kind of kept coming back to it. Like it was a lost tooth. You could just tell that Griffin's like tongue would graze over his lost tooth, as well as how his thoughts would like naturally revert to Theo and like gravitate towards Theo and how he had missed him, and it felt very natural to me. I also thought that it dealt with the first love thing and losing it, and how like first love is kind of this all-consuming thing for most humans, and how when it's gone it hurts. But not only that, but Theo got to deal with losing his first love because he died. So how worse can it get for him? I never thought that I needed a gay love square until I had gotten it. Like, let's face it, like for those of you guys who have read this book, you guys know what I'm talking about. And for those who haven't, the gay love square should be more of a reason for you to actually read the book. So I suggest you go ahead and read it, and then tell me your thoughts, and we can talk about how Adam Silvera did such a wonderful job giving me such a gay love square. I thought the characters were really believable. I didn't get a chance to, I didn't have a moment where I was kind of confused as to what was going on with the book, or the characters' motions through everything. Everything felt so natural, and sometimes I had a hard time remembering that these guys are fictional characters and not something that are fictional characters and not something that I see on a day-to-day basis. But that was just how invested I had gotten in the book. I thought that everything was beautifully written, and it wasn't like the pain or the grief wasn't dramatized in any way, shape, or form. It felt very natural to me. I thought nothing felt overdone. Griffin's character with his dealing with his grief, as well as Jackson's grief, and how Griffin dealt with the fact that Theo had moved on, despite him promising that they were going to be this end game, they were going to find their way back to one another, was very natural to me. And you could tell that he really was hurt and destroyed by the fact that Theo had decided to move on and was falling head over heels for this guy, while Griffin was kind of in a position where he was where he was kind of still stuck and just kind of wanted to be with Theo, but couldn't because of reasons that you will find out in this book. I love that their relationships were so normalized in terms of LGBT, because sometimes like LGBT books will put too much placement in coming out, in how to adjust to life being out and how all that stuff works. But I think that it did that so beautifully, and I didn't have an issue with the fact that they both kind of came out at the same time and nothing was over dramatized with their coming out. They were very welcomed and accepted. It normalized everything. Like, there wasn't a lot of issues on the fact that they were gay, and it gave us a lot of focus to see how, like, love stories with gay characters work that doesn't revolve around someone's coming out. I mean, coming out stories are great as well, and I love them so much because they give us so much representation for being in the community, but I think that having stories that don't always focus on coming out and realizing one another, but just being in love as a gay couple is just as amazing, because we don't get that a lot. It's always coming out, it's all of these other things, and like coming out, the fallings out with coming out, and then like the dealings you have to do with the problems. But with this one, it was just focused on their love story, and I thought that that was amazing, and it was done so well that they came out, but it wasn't their biggest issue. Their biggest issue was just them, and I thought that was so beautiful to read, considering most LGBTQIA involves some form of coming out, and it's always just focused around them coming out and not the actual love story that we're supposed to be interested in. Oh dear, I just lost a tea bag in there. Didn't want that aesthetic. I'm gonna put the book down because my arm's hurting. But the things I didn't like about the book was that it took us a long time to figure out how Theo died. We spent the majority of the book learning who he was as a person, and then the relationship with each different character, and who he was in relation to Griffin and what his death meant to everybody. But we never found out when he died until, like, I want to say 3/4 of the way through, and by then it was such an awkward build-up because I was wondering if I had missed something, if there was something that I had skipped over, like my eyes had glazed over because I was like so invested in the book that sometimes like you know what I'm talking about, your eyes will just kind of glaze over a line or a word and it ruins everything. But I felt like how this book was formatted, it didn't give us a lot of time to tell us how Theo died, and I felt like it was anticlimactic, because I feel like the book was building up all this tension as to how Theo died, all this grief, and then we found out it was kind of like, I was kind of more annoyed than anything, because by then I had built up these ideas in my mind that like something had happened to Theo, he had gotten sick, and he just passed away, when in reality something else had happened to him, and we never got those hints, we never got to piece that together ourselves. It was just kind of dropped into our lap halfway through the book, and by then we were like, well, he's dead already, like what do you want me to do with it? So I just thought that it didn't give me a lot of heartbreak, and there was supposed to be some sense of mystery behind it, or at least that's what I had gotten from it, and I did not get that. I felt like there were some issues with the kind of how they were building up to it, because it was just like, Theo died, Theo died, Theo died, Theo is dead, he is gone, and then all of a sudden this like plot of information was dropped into our laps, and it wasn't hinted at all throughout the book. It wasn't mentioned how he died. It wasn't some dramatic tragedy that we thought would have happened. Well, actually it was dramatic and it was a tragic, but it wasn't, the information that it was given to us wasn't that well done. I also found myself not being a fan of Theo towards the end. I know like there was a weird love triangle between these three characters, Theo, Jackson, and Griffin, and that was kind of like the main point, in a sense, the main point. But I felt like at some point Theo felt a little unrealistic to me in terms of what he wanted between Jackson and Griffin, because he was just kind of like, he'd tell Griffin that he was still in love with him, and then he'd tell Jackson he was in love with him, but he didn't want to let either of them go. And while I found that Theo keeping Griffin as a friend was warming and kind of nice to know that this could happen, it felt like sometimes Theo didn't understand what he was doing to Jackson, or that Griffin wasn't aware that Theo knew what he was doing and whatnot. It just felt a little selfish on Theo's part, which is a little weird to say because the character's dead and we never got to see any parts of like any points of view but it was a little apparent, like it felt that was how it was coming off to me, because Theo never seemed to want to allow Griffin to move on, or for him to move on, and there was never that conversation between the two of them as to what would have happened if this were to happen. It was very much, you and I are still endgame, yes we are, but I'm in love with him, and still with him, and it didn't feel very fair for Jackson or Griffin to be in this position. And by the end of it, I was just like, Theo, what are you doing? You're better than this. And since like Theo was characterized as such a warm person, so I just felt like it wasn't fair to give that kind of relationship without much of an explanation. And I wish that we had gotten like some head jumping a little bit to see like Jackson's point of view on the entire thing and whatnot, and see how that might have evolved and how he sees it. Because right now we just where we got was just Griffin, and Griffin's really biased, if you haven't noticed, so there's that. I also thought that this was a bit of a struggle for me personally. I don't know if you guys had it, but sometimes I'll go through chapters and just kind of read through them and not think, because some chapters don't always have titles, some of them don't skip. So when I was introduced to the jump between present and past, and then past to present and whatnot, it was a bit jarring for me, because we would get cut off at interesting moments of this present or past story, and I feel like we could have continued on. Like, not everything had to be present past, present past, present past. It could have been past present, present past, past, or however, because of how the story was going. And I felt like some parts of it were not disconnected, because that was the whole point, or fragmented, but like we were missing pieces, and not in a weird fragmented, this is on purpose thing. It just felt like, that's why I was so confused about Theo's death, was because it was so fragmented at first that I couldn't figure out if I had missed something or whatnot. There were just missing bits of information that I feel we could have fleshed out a little bit more had the chapters been a little longer, or had we gotten 2 chapters of the same like time frame. My final thoughts on this book was that I thought this was such a heartbreaking book. It was so beautiful, the characters were well done. I thought that there was a lot of room for them to grow, and it kind of left us in a situation where we knew they were going to continue to grow from this point on, but we also know that the story for our side has ended here, and we can continue on with the story. Like, I think if Adam Silvera wanted, he probably has enough room to work with a sequel, but I think it works great as a standalone, so don't hate me for saying that there should be a sequel. I'm just saying there is room for a sequel, but I'm not going to be angry or demand that we get a sequel if it stays a standalone. I thought that encapsulated grief very well. I could see the characters' motives and their different characteristics and their values and everything, and it was just so great to read. My overall rating / what I recommend is I give this a 4 out of 5 stars. I would have given this a full 5 out of 5 stars, but I marked it down for the mystery with Theo's death, the transitions, and kind of Theo's character, but I would definitely recommend this to someone. I think this was a great book to read, and I can't wait to pick up more of Adam Silvera's writing, and I'm also excited to see more of his writing be published. But that is it for my tea talk with History's All You Left Me. I hope you guys have similar thoughts on this. If you don't, leave them politely in the comments below, and I'll talk to you guys about it. I love talking about these things. What else? If you like to see more tea talks, leave a like or subscribe to me. I try to upload tea talks once a month at least. February is kind of a weird month. I didn't plan that out very well, but I do try to post tea talks once a month. Maybe I'll have one twice this month to make it for February, but I try to post tea talks once a month. I try to have videos out every Tuesday and Saturday. Sometimes I'll skip a Saturday or Tuesday depending on like what's going on with my week, but for the most part I will keep to that. Other than that, I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Bye.